Is there something that you think leaders underestimate in terms of what's needed to really drive a successful transformation?
I don't know if they underestimate, but I can only rephrase that. The most important thing is to bring people, the employees, take them along, give them the right answers, and set clear goals. And then, yes, sorry to say, it is about consistency. And yes, somebody who doesn't like the new goals and doesn't like the new spirit that you want to create, then yeah, I'm sorry to say, you're probably in the wrong space here. And the longer you stay in the grayish, in that kind of transformation mode, the worse for the company.
What 3 pieces of advice would you give to future leaders?
I mean, first and foremost, love what you do. Be enthusiastic about being part of that industry. Then it's
from the retail floor at Runners Point, to retail operations at Foot Locker, to driving digital transformation at Globetrotter, to the CEO at All4Golf, Europe's largest golf retailer. This is the impressive journey of this episode's guest, Johannes Jurecka. Johannes shares the key success factors from his amazing career, including his biggest failures and what he learned from them. Johannes is a humble and human leader who isn't afraid to take tough decisions, so stick around to the end of the episode so you don't miss his 3 pieces of advice for future leaders of the sports and outdoor industry.
So, Johannes, you've had a super fascinating career, going from specialty run with Runners Point to, let's say, sneaker lifestyle with Foot Locker, to specialty outdoor with Globetrotter, and now leading the largest specialty golf e-commerce business in Europe. What, looking back, what have been the defining moments in your career, would you say, that have influenced who you are today and how you lead today?
Well, I would say in every step that you just talked about, there's something in it that makes me now the leader I am for All4Golf. So it's a hard question to just say, okay, that was the beginning or this is the end point, because for me, it's always the journey that, is leading the way. And the good thing when I look back about my career is that every step kind of felt natural, and that I always came to a point where I said, okay, in this pattern or in this environment, it kind of feels stuck, and I want to change, and that worked out perfectly well until now. So yeah, that's how I would answer that.
I guess that's a need for ongoing personal development and for new challenges. Is that how you see that, and where does that come from? Do you think? Why?
Well, I mean, it always goes back to childhood. I once heard, and I would say that how I grew up, I never had pressure in the sense of you have to become whatever. It was always totally open, but still I, had an environment, a father who was very successful in being a manager. And and in the beginning, if you look at my CV, it was I was trying to do the complete opposite. I would say if I look back now, it was not a conscious decision, but I really studied for ages, or it took ages. I did some radio in that days. I played a lot of tennis, so it was hard to find the path. But if I look back, so once I started the journey that you were referring to, it was it clicked, and I was 100% in it, and that is also a pattern. Once I'm in, I'm 100% or more in, and I don't stop. And if I see an opportunity, I go for it. So yeah, it's not a straight answer. I'm sorry for that, but it's it's how it developed for me. And if I look back, it's more of I want to achieve certain things in life. So I want to have a family. I want to go on vacation. These kind of things that are somehow, I don't know, out of your childhood, that how the environment is, that you want to achieve. So it's not based. So I never wanted to become a managing director. That was never the plan.
Yeah. Okay. So as you said, the path that I described was maybe after some radio, and you said different things, and tennis. But when you stepped in that career and you joined Runners Point, since then there've been, let's say, two things in common with all of your roles since then. They've all been somehow either directly or indirectly connected to sport, and they've all been in retail. Has that, from that kind of first opportunity at Runners Point, has that been something that has been conscious decision, or it's just kind of naturally worked that way?
No, that was definitely a conscious decision. So from the beginning already, when I joined Runners Point, it was a conscious decision to do something in sports and to do something with people. So that was the main pattern that drove me throughout my career. So, I mean, I never really looked into some other sectors, although it might be interesting. So never say never. I'm pretty happy to be in the sporting goods industry.
So, but why? What is it about people that you wanted to work with? I mean, it's almost a strange question to ask, but I'm interested. What's that? Yeah, what's that kind of motivation to work with people?
First of all, I like people, and I mean, to make that kind of working environment where everybody can bring in their own strengths is something that I learned in my days at Runners Point as a store manager already, that everybody has different strengths, and you kind of have to sort out how does this work together like a perfect team. And whatever scale you work at, in the end, it's always the same. You kind of have to achieve. Of course, the bigger the organization, the more difficult it gets. You have more indirect people that are below your pay grade, and you have to look at your directs, how they lead, which kind of is a different challenge. But yes, to build that perfect team that really can make the difference, like I always tend to say, that is the thing that really drives me, and where I would say, at least in some cases, I succeeded, or I had a very good team always at the end of days.
You said there that obviously everybody has different strengths, and I think in that way, most people need to be managed differently. You can't, I think, have a one-size-fits-all approach to management. But I think in the early days of leading, certainly I know I found that quite difficult. How did you kind of discover that was the case, and what was your approach to that? Because I think for younger managers particularly, that's one of the big challenges.
There are few things that I always bear in mind, and the first and most important that I always say is trust. So you have to start with trust. So I give you the power to be responsible for whatever it is, and I trust you are the best. It's a little bit like in soccer. I always like that reference. So if you are my forward, then you're the best forward in the whole league. No question, no doubt about it. As long as I tell you, you're not. But that's a little bit the approach. And then, yes, you are in the game with anybody of the team, and you give feedback about what you've seen on the floor, if you remember back in the days on the store floor. And if you get into that kind of pattern, the trust that you give is given back to your feedback, because then you have the acceptance of your partners or your employees that this is meaningful and this is not just me saying something or having a bad day. No, this is something where I want to bring them forward. And that's so for me, trust is the most important thing in the whole leadership game. And the other is consistency. That is also always an anecdote that from the days as a store manager. You can give a lot of feedback. You can give everybody a second chance, third, fourth, whatever. But somewhere you need to draw a line in order to keep the whole team alive, because otherwise your credibility will be teared apart by all the others saying, yeah, okay, he's just talking. I mean, let's keep him talking. Nothing will happen. And so it's that mix of, yes, you always have my trust. I will always give you honest feedback about where I see you in the team and where the development tasks are. And as long as we're in a good dialogue, everything is fine. And in all honesty, and that's the most difficult part, I expect that from my peers as well, that they give me feedback on my behavior, on my role, and that I can learn from that.
Yeah.
And of course, knowing my role now, it's more difficult perhaps because simply people tend to think that due to the role, something changes, but you stay the same human and you're open for it. I mean,
Excellent. Yeah. But I think I would say that's maybe not so common with people in your position. Or let's say I've experienced certainly situations where that's not the case. So if I would define that, I'd say that's a very humble approach to leadership. Is that something that resonates you? And have you experienced that in the past yourself with some leaders that you've had and worked for?
Definitely, that's something that I really learned from the beginning. This humble approach, I would definitely tick the box there, because you're not the one knowing everything best, and so you have to be very humble. And I expect not from myself that I'm the best. I mean, if you look at my position now, I have to somehow overlook from the interest of financial investors to somebody working as a part-time in the store or in logistics. So it's a very broad band that you have to cover in your role. And so I can't be the specialist for everything. And therefore you need to be humble. You have to learn. You have to listen to the peers. I mean, that's why you hire department heads, because you want them to give you a good new angle on how to do business in that particular area. And then you learn. And this kind of conversation brings companies forward. You don't have to agree every time, but if you agree, it's 100% until we take another decision.
Yeah.
And then you work or you come around. I mean, it's for me, it always, or in theory, it all sounds so easy, but of course, we all know that sometimes reality is harder. And yes, I mean, I don't know if it's 7 p.m. in the afternoon and an employee shows up with concerns about whatever. It's not always easy to be, because you're from a mindset perhaps are in a complete different corner of the company in your thoughts, what is concerning you. But you really have to make the time, or if it really doesn't work any other way, to say, hey, sorry, this moment in time is just a bad moment for me because I don't know, at 8 I have another call or whatever it is. But then not just send him away, but give him a concrete date in your calendar where you say, come back tomorrow, 10 a.m. We will have that conversation. I'm very happy that you're here, but this moment in time just doesn't fit in my calendar.
Okay, let's go back a little bit to your career journey. And as I mentioned, you work for some quite different organizations in terms of their size, in terms of their international presence in terms of the categories that they play in. What's in each example? So Runners Point, maybe it's difficult for Runners Point because that was your, let's say, your first main career, but let's say maybe from Foot Locker and Globetrotter and now All4Golf. What's been the biggest surprise when you've entered into each of those different organizations?
I mean, for Runners Point, it was clearly that human approach that you have to bring people to the next level, that you have to invest in people. For Foot Locker, it was, kind of mind-blowing that you coming out of a successful German mid-sized company, thinking, okay, yeah, we know how the business runs. And then you kind of realize you're still doing the same business. You have a complete different approach, and it also makes sense. So it's not that you could argue that, yeah, the one or the other doesn't make sense, but sometimes the middle is the best, just thinking out loud. And then Globetrotter were two things that really stayed in my mind. And one is really that uniqueness of the brand. And as there were many employees still from the founding days in there. So this kind of, I've walked the path of this brand from the beginning attitude. And of course, the need for change, that, the patterns of the past don't work for the future, and you have to, although there might be difficult times or there might be even resistance on some things you have to do as a management, you have to do it to secure the existence of the company and the future for our employees.
Are there any key learnings you would say that have come from your previous experiences that you've been able to clearly bring and leverage those experiences in what you're doing today in driving a transformation here?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a little bit like I said in the beginning. It's all in me, and every part helps. So, I mean, this financial driven approach, of course, was something that is inherited in Foot Locker as a public listed company. So that is very helpful, because there, the more family business approach of Globetrotter and Runners Point wouldn't be very helpful. But then on the other hand, this entrepreneurial approach that I learned in Runners Point, but also in parts in Globetrotter, is something that I really from the beginning made sure that we have that here in All4Golf, because we kind of rebuilt the company within the last 4 years. And there it is important that you have that take the ball and run with it approach when it comes to your leadership team.
Yeah. So you touched on this already, but when you arrived here, so All4Golf is private equity owned, and I think it was quite early in the new ownership, and in terms of the acquisition was at almost, let's say, a peak of the market, and you come in and identified that you need to drive transformation to really achieve the success that's needed. But how did you get the support and the commitment that you needed to succeed with that, with both let's say the private equity, so the board, but also the team here? Because obviously you touched on this before, the need to be able to work and collaborate with both.
On the one hand, it's honesty and tactics as well. Honesty, of course, completely versus your investors, because there to hide anything doesn't make any sense. And you have to face the truth. But when it comes to the company, sometimes it's not the best that everybody is aware of how good or bad situations are for the company. So you have to play a little bit of game there in giving security to your staff, in saying we do the right things, we continue to do the right things, success will come. But as always, you invest and then it takes some time, or you seed, and then it takes time until it really flourishes.
Yeah.
And that's important as a message for the company. But of course, to your peers when it comes to finance, it's true honesty about the situation, and always making clear that you believe that there is a prosperous future ahead, but there are a few things you have to deal with upfront. And I think that's what I would recommend. Make sure that the company stays as still or as motivated as always, like normal operations. But on the other hand, make sure that in the background, the few people that are needed are all in and are fighting.
Yeah. And this was, well, it's not the first time that you were working for a business private equity, because I think at one point Runners Point was. But obviously this is the first time that you're in the managing director CEO role, so have that direct relationship with the investors. So how has that been? How has that process of your own development of having that relationship with investors been over the last 4.5 years or so? A bit longer?
Yeah, nearly 4 years now. And first of all, at Runners Point, it was more like a privately owned company for me, because I never had direct contact to any investor. I mean, you heard sometimes some rumors, but in the end, I had the two managing directors. They were responsible for me, and that was it. And so I was not into that kind of game. And now, of course, already being hired from the investor is a different situation, because you're a little bit in between, because you have to manage the expectations from investor side, but you also have to make sure that it stays in a realistic frame. And this is, I would say, the most important challenge, because what I always say is we have a common goal. I mean, in the end, investors want to see that company is successful. And of course, the managing director and the whole team of the company want to be successful. I mean, that's also, if you talk about leadership, something that I really much envision and also talk to everybody in the leadership team. I really believe every human being wants to be successful or wants to be part of the success. So make that happen. If you feel the success, everybody is more driven and will become more successful. I mean, it's the same with strengths and so on.
Yeah. Don't
focus so much on the weakness, focus on the strength. And and this in-between situation, of course, is not always easy. It's coming back to your question. But also there, you have to be honest, you have to stay true to yourself, and then it is what it is. And sometimes it's not what perhaps the company wants to hear or the employees, and sometimes perhaps it's not what the investor wants to hear.
Yeah. What leadership habits did you need to adopt or maybe change or drop to lead that process versus maybe your natural starts? Was it something that you were naturally very comfortable with, or did you have to change anything to adapt to that context?
Well, first of all, I have to give a lot of credit to Bernhard Claude, the CFO of All4Golf, who really guided me also through that process. And as a team, of course, it's much easier to do. And with Bernhard, it was like from the beginning that we had that connection and the same understanding of what to do and what is good for the business. And in this case, it was crystal clear that it can only be a growth case and build from scratch kind of approach. And so I would say it was this lucky coincidence that I really had a strong CFO on my side, who helped me a lot, where I learned a lot, but where we shared the same values and the same kind of business approach. And we never lost, any time on the discussions about what to do, because we had a clear and still have a very clear understanding of what needs to happen. And that is, I would say, a very, very important success factor, that this interaction between finance or CFO and managing director or CEO of a company is close, especially when you're finance driven. Because, every operation you do in the end is somehow translated in numbers.
Yeah.
And if you are there not 100%, you can you simply automatically start playing a little bit, and that is not good for anybody.
So, and you said there that for you, having that focus more on the growth rather than the cutting, you see that as definitely the easier path, the growth path rather than the cutting path.
It's definitely the more enjoyable path. To take out people, to cut out of an organization certain functionalities is nothing that gives you joy. So to look for good new people who can run certain departments in a different way than it was before, of course, is a more fun. But still, I would say in the long run, the more challenging part, because if you simply take out, they are gone, and somehow you reorganize with the team left. But to build from scratch and get that mindset over the whole company and then down towards every employee, I would say that's even a longer and more difficult path. So yes, the more enjoyable part, but in the end, I have to say, like I said before, to my time at Globetrotter or wherever hard management decisions need to be taken, I always see them a little bit as well as part of the job. You simply have to do it for the good of the company. And that's why, I won't, differ too much between them. Of course, it's better to be in a growth case, no doubt about it. But there's also a part in business where you have to do these cuts and say, okay, due to changes from a consumer behavior, from a technology perspective, you have to change things for the good of the future. And then you still have to do it, and you do it with the same conviction like a growth case.
And in terms of many times in a private equity environment, there's a clear timeline and potential exit strategy for some or maybe even all of those investors. And I would imagine that comes with it. I don't know whether it's more or different pressure. I'm not sure. Maybe that's an interesting question. But with that in mind, have you had to adapt how you think about the way the business is going to develop? Is it a different approach than you've had before in terms of kind of building your plan and identifying, how you want to move forward?
First of all, first answer is that our investors here are real long-term. So we definitely are looking what can we achieve short-term, and there is pressure, no doubt about it. But we don't have that kind of approach like it has to be in that year or whatever. So they're interested in developing the company. So that doesn't differ too much from a privately owned company. The ambition in privately owned companies sometimes is a little bit more or not that open. It is in there as well, of course, but sometimes it's more the humble approach, I would say. Okay, if we surpass the plan, it's still great and perhaps even better, because then perhaps from a cost side or whatever, we are on the safe side. And of course, there, I would say from an investor perspective, it's more year by year, really max out on the goals that you align on. And that can differ from year to year, of course. It's not as simple as saying, okay, it's top and bottom line every year.
Yeah. What would you consider to be your most important task or role as the leader of this business?
Then it's really make sure that the employees of All4Golf can grow in their roles.
Okay. So I'm going to pick up on that because you mentioned earlier on the philosophy of picking up the ball and running with it. So what does that look like from a point of view of empowering the team, which I think is very much kind of the answer to the previous question. So what does that mean? How are you doing that? And how do leaders do that most effectively?
Basically, it's for me a task of goal setting. So with my leadership team, I have a one-on-one every week, and of course we have certain different goals in every area, and we kind of check in week by week. Where do we stand? Where are the challenges? And I can give my opinion on things, bring in my thoughts, but then I expect the leaders to run and develop and come up with the ideas. Of course, I bring in ideas as well. I mean, I'm not the silent one saying, okay, I don't have a clue what to do, but I'm not a specialist. So if you have a good idea on the next campaign about products or about the discounting, bring it up, and we can have a try, and in whatever area it is. And I'm lucky to say that now here talking about All4Golf, that we really have that attitude in the leadership with a lot of long-time employees from All4Golf that were willing to adapt and really take the ball and run with it. And that's my approach to it, in all honesty.
But how does that, do you think that trickles down? Because I think it's one thing in terms of you empowering your team. And of course, I believe strongly in the value of you kind of setting the tone and setting the scene, but also to make sure that reaches the, as you said earlier on, the guy or the girl in the district or in the store.
Yeah. And it's a very fair and a very good question. There you have to have two parameters, and it's all linked to HR development, where we are also very lucky now with what we've achieved so far, in my opinion. So the one thing is, yes, just from an organizational view, make sure that you have an organization which is capable simply from a leadership perspective. So I don't believe in large teams, or just as an example, the logistics operations, when I joined, was a one-man show. So it was one leader and around 50 people working with him. And so you need to change that to an organization that can work, because for me, if you have 50 employees on your own, you can't manage, you can't get into that dialogue that I was referring to before. And then you have to build the support from an HR function. So we introduced an NPS score. So we have now quarterly insights of every department and the overall mood in the company, which is very, very helpful. We did now a job level project. So all jobs are now leveled and linked to salary bands. So we also have a very good transparency on why you're on what job level and what is the salary band you can move in and develop yourself? Or do you need to jump to another salary band in improving your skills? And there you have the transparency. You look at the job description, what is the next level, and say, okay, look, this is the development room where we have to talk about and we have to train. And then you can continue. So you have to build a system where you give support to all the leaders in your organization. That they have the tool, but also as an organization, you have the transparency that you can react if anything doesn't run in the wanted direction.
Yeah. Okay. I think when you gave the example there, logistics, I think when we've spoken before, I think when you mentioned also that when you joined, there was maybe no marketing department or let's say, not a department, maybe I'm sure there was probably people working on it. So how have you been able to rebuild the organization in terms of culturally because it sounds like such a big change, if there was individual, let's say, experts that were almost really controlling different areas of the business, that's quite a big cultural shift, even internally. So I guess you've already touched on it in terms of the transparency and the openness, but I'm sure it's maybe not quite so straightforward.
Yeah, I mean, I would rather say that we moved from e-commerce or retail generalist to a more specialist organization. Because in the past, it was like, okay, today is Black Friday. We all have to help out on logistics, which as a management method, you can do that. So don't get me wrong on it, but it can't be the pattern that everybody needs to know how logistics work and how to pack or to pick. But that was inherited. So if anybody in the company had a problem in whatever area, everybody was jumping on it. And you can do that from time to time, but that's not how I want to organize things in a company. So you have to have that special wisdom in every department. And I think that's the biggest change, where people in the beginning tend to believe that you take something away from them. And that's a very, very close edge or sharp edge where you have to take care that there is an understanding of that specialization shift that you have to make. Because otherwise you lose them, because they would say, before I was somehow responsible for logistics and e-commerce and customer service, and now I can only do customer service. How bad is that? But if you explain it, that, the needs of the company, if you grow, needs that kind of specialist who really is into customer service, just making it up, and knows how to treat the customer well and in a very fast and efficient way, then that's the gain of the company already in the future, instead of, more people jump on it when something goes south.
So leading that type of cultural change, evolution can be quite slow, especially, I guess, if you've got employees that I think, have been here for, a long period of time. So how are you working with your team to make sure that is really an ongoing message, and that you're bringing those people that have been with the business for a long time, and maybe sometimes they're a little bit maybe reluctant to change at the start? How are you able to really kind of bring them along with you on that journey?
I wouldn't differ so much between long-term employees and new employees, because the new employees bring in their experiences from former companies, and you have to bring them together and build that own. So what I experienced is more that it's kind of how you explain things within a company, how you set goals, and how you say, why are we doing it? Why do we have to adapt? I think that's the most important, because what I've learned in every station of my career is people have a kind of sense of what is going on and what is right and what is wrong, or if this flavor, of, okay, yeah, we always did it this way, but not so sure if that is still the right thing to do. And so if you're able to transform that into, if you have that gut feeling, shout out and talk to your superior about that something perhaps is not in a perfect shape in your opinion. If you succeed in that, you will be successful as a business, and you will take the others along, because it's then kind of coming naturally out of the organization. Of course, if you always are the one on stage saying, but we have this and, we need to achieve that, it will be difficult. And that's not saying that I'm not standing there sometimes in talking about what our goal sets are and things we have to achieve. Because yes, goal setting is important, but there are 1,000 ways to get to the point where we want to go. And there, the specialists and yes, even, the part-time employee, like I said before, can have the great idea of how to organize things differently, which helps on the long run. So it needs to be inherited in the mindset, and that, of course, always goes slow. And as a leader, you always have the feeling that things could move faster and so on. But I'm also aware that in that position, you don't necessarily get to know all these good things that are happening.
Yeah. So things are happening that you're not seeing every day and not aware of.
I perhaps only read it in the numbers and say, hey, oh, wow, where did that come from? And then they can't even explain to me, because sometimes they don't have the connection to the small tricks they did.
So I think you when you joined, or quite quickly when you joined it, you've gone through a process of rebuilding the leadership team. And I'm interested, knowing the challenges that you faced in terms of transforming the business, was there a profile of people that you were looking for to bring on board? Was there either a skill or a behavior or competency that you were thinking, okay, this is going to be really important for us, irrespective of the function, but more a kind of general topic?
Yes, of course, I would call it the growth mindset. So it's about, we respect and we see where we stand for here, but I have an idea of how to grow, for myself, but also for the company, for the employees that I lead going forward, that growth. So my questions is always, where could you and the department of the company be in 3 years, in 5 years? What do you envision? Where will, in whatever department is, what will the future look like? And how do you bring others along there? And how do you manage? And it's, for me, that's the most difficult part in that journey. Out of these few conversations that you have before hiring somebody, to really get into the core, or what drives you, mentality, mindset of candidates.
Yeah.
So that's, I know that there are personality tests and things like that, but in the end, at least for myself, I can say that I haven't found the one where I say, okay, let's do that, and then I can build the team from an inner motivation perspective.
Yeah. So there you're talking fundamentally somehow about soft skills.
Absolutely.
Being the, if not the most important, at least as important, and probably for your leadership team, probably the most important in some manner.
Then don't get me wrong on that. The skill set is completely up to guys like you, to check the background.
Exactly.
So once I get into the game, I would expect that, the skill set is not the big topic. Of course, it's also part of questions. But the core of what I'm looking at is more the mentality, what drives me or what drives you, and where is the common ground in that journey. Then, because the skills, yes, it's a given if you want to become a department leader.
Yeah. What is your approach to try and identify that? Because as you said, it is the most difficult thing, and it's normally the thing that people are fired for in the end. Actually, no, it's
absolutely, yeah. Unfortunately,
yeah. So, any secrets you want to share on how you kind of try and identify that?
If I would know, I would let you know. But I mean, all I can say is ask as many questions as you can find around these. Look into the private life, how they open up on things and how they do things in their lives. And that's all I can say. I mean, we also had hires that didn't work out here at this company, and it's always a part where I say there's also a failure from company side if things don't work out the way they should be, and that's a sad thing to say, but yeah, also there.
Many companies in our industry are often located in places that are, let's say, natural kind of population hubs or talent hubs, because, you know, they may be core to the activity that they're part of, or for whatever reason. There are hundreds of reasons. In that sense, it can be quite difficult to attract, talent to that company because of the location. Is that something that has been a challenge for you here? I mean, Hanover is let's say a small city within Germany. Is it a city or is it a town? I guess it is a city.
Yeah, it is a city. Yeah. I wouldn't say a small town. I would still consider this 600,000 plus inhabitants as a mid-size or big city, but that's me coming out of a smaller environment. But I get your question, and Hanover is definitely not the e-com hotspot in Germany. So of course you have to find solutions that somehow serves the company and somehow serves your employees or your leadership team even. We all know that we have electronic means that make things easier in leading teams from different locations, but still at All4Golf, we are strong believers in an office culture, because we think if you want to create something that is unique and you build unique creativity, you need that kind of buy-in to the company. And that, of course, is stronger if you are together as a team and really together, go to lunch together, play a round of golf here in the fitting center, somewhere in between meetings. So we are trying that to really reinforce that office culture. But of course, we have flexible solutions for people that fit to the company, but have a different location for their living, which then means that, somewhere in between 3 to 4 days, you have to be on the ground. And then you have 1 or 2 days in home office. There are some very rare examples in a very specialist role where you would say it can be even more, but that's not what we're aiming for.
And is employer branding something that your HR team are kind of conscious of, and is that something that you work on as a business to try and make it easier actually to attract that talent?
Of course. I mean, like I said, we are on a journey as well in HR. So we focus very much now on, first of all, building an HR team, then building that internal measures that also make sure that if you hire good people, that they like what you get.
Yeah.
Because also there, I mean, it's like in a good shop, if you like the publicity around it and then you don't like the product, it's a little bit waste of money.
Yeah.
And the same here. So that's something we definitely have on the radar to make it more professional than we already do. But of course, yes, we have all HR retention measures that are more or less standard now. You have something on the table if you're a new joiner and things like that. So yes, we're looking into all these topics, try to make it the All4Golf way. But there's still a lot that can be improved and needs to be done, but it always needs to fit the company.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you can do it, you can invest a lot of money in branding. I fully get it. But yes, the more important thing is that really the things you promise about the company are really there and are visible.
Yeah, 100%. Oh, it makes complete sense. You need to put things in place internally first before you necessarily drawing attention to those things. And it's yeah.
And of course, I mean, let's be honest here. I mean, success is the main driver of how beautiful a business looks like. I mean, that's always the thing where I also bridge, that conversation with investors and the company. Because of course you get the questions, okay, why the EBITDA need to grow every year. Why is that? And in the end, you become more attractive. It's as simple as that. It's in the end, if you compare it to any sports, that's the result. That's if you are in tier 1, 2, or 3 of a business, if whatever EBITDA percentage level you're in. And so in the golf game, we have a lot of golfers here, of course. You want to be a scratch golfer. Of course you want, and you're aiming for it. And the same it is for us as a business. Of course, we are aiming to be a scratch golf company, if you know what I'm trying to say. So that's, I think, a good bridge as well on how to explain to somebody not being that deep into numbers. Why is it important? Yeah, because you have to aim for the best.
But I agree, although I have to say, I think it can't just be that. It can't just being a high performing company in terms of profitability or revenue doesn't necessarily make it a great company in terms of to work for.
Absolutely. But it resembles, there's a part of it that while they are so super successful, I want to work for them. But of course, there are super successful companies where at least perhaps my person wouldn't like to work for.
So you've been involved in or led multiple transformations across brick and mortar retail, omnichannel, and now e-commerce or primarily e-commerce businesses. Looking back at those experiences and looking back at the different leaders, is there something that you think leaders underestimate in terms of what's needed to really drive a successful transformation?
I don't know if they underestimate, but I can only rephrase that. The most important thing is to bring people, the employees, take them along, give them the right answers, and set clear goals. And then, yes, sorry to say, it is about consistency. And yes, somebody who doesn't like the new goals and doesn't like the new spirit that you want to create, then I'm sorry to say, you're probably in the wrong space here. And I think it's that mix. And the longer you stay in the grayish, in that kind of transformation mode, the worse for the company. And then so yes, speed definitely is important, so that you have a clear directive that you can execute on. And then it takes whatever it takes, half a year or even a year. But this transformation, it will not end, but the hard phase, that they really cut into something, is defined, and there's also a reason and there's a goal. It's, for me, that's all I can say, where I saw the most constraints and difficulties in these processes.
Yeah.
And you always have to make yourself clear as a leader. It's impossible to take everybody along. And it's kind of okay. I mean, that sounds harsh, but it's kind of okay, because there are others out there as well, perhaps, that then fit better to each person. And that's why I'm a big believer in everybody has to look for themselves when it comes to a job. So if in private life, I wherever, somebody sits and say, yeah, I hate my job now for 15 years, I kind of, sorry, I don't get it. And why are you not changing?
Yeah.
Because simply what I can say is, as long as you're trying, you're not giving up. But if you go 15 years to a job that you don't like, we all know where that ends, and what terrible consequences that have for the company and for the person.
Yeah.
And so in that process, I think also this transparency from a leadership perspective is very important, to say, hey, look, it's okay if you don't like it. Perhaps give it a try, and we talk again. And you kind of take them along the path, and some of them will move over and get a better understanding of it, and some not. Yes, it's part of the process.
Yeah. So you gave the example there about somebody that's not enjoying their role. What is it about your role and about what you do that you really enjoy, that gives you that energy?
I really like if you look at the day, you have so many different topics. So it's that's what I'm really enjoying. You go from HR to logistics to e-commerce to retail to all your suppliers. So it's every minute something new, and that's what I'm enjoying. And of course, keep on learning from the team, from your peers, and keep open on what the future brings. And you talked about that transformation, and I think from brick and mortar to e-commerce, and I think we are on the next transformation just around the corner with AI and all the possibilities coming from that angle, with agnostic, whatever it might look like in the future. But you have to be open for that kind of topics and think about how can you already adapt as good as you can to these challenges and bring that into your teams. And that drives me to also look into the future. And there you have this explanation again. Why do we always have to change, or why do we need to do these things differently now? Because yes, the world keeps changing every day. It's as fast as never before.
Yeah, absolutely.
How change is driving.
Absolutely.
And also there, the more you talk about it, the more you get people in the organization to kind of understand it. The better it is, the opener is. And so we are now really working on that AI topic to give support to all department heads in looking into what are the opportunities in your department and how might the future 5 years from now look like.
Yeah. And how do you, maybe the question should be, do you, but how, if you do, how do you find a good balance between work life, between family life, between personal life? Well, maybe the question is, do you first? Let's start there.
Life is life. Famous song from an Austrian band.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's a little bit really what I have to say. I mean, you can't separate life from work, in my opinion. Life is what you do and what you like to do, and how you build the life around you. And of course, you need to find the balance that fits. So if I go for a morning run because I know it will be a very stressful day, that's my hygiene on that day to make sure that, I will enjoy it. And if I, need time off, then I try to take that time off simply in saying, okay, no, on that day I can't because it's family time there. And that's the only thing that I'm really trying to do is to make sure that you have this line between family and work, so that you have these times where you perhaps are not as available as normal, and you simply say, yes, we can have a short chat in the morning, and of course I look my emails, but during the day my phone stays in the drawer, and that's important. But it's still life, and it's life like it is today in Hannover and All4Golf, like it will be tomorrow when I'm home with the family.
Yeah. What are you as a leader working on personally now in terms of, you talked about the fact that you like to kind of keep developing. Is there any kind of skill or habit or behavior or something that you're working on to kind of improve yourself now? I mean, not now, but you know what I mean?
I mean, then you already made the big points that are driving me there. I mean, it's about how to hire that kind of attitude that you need. It's kind of how do you get that visible to yourself, and of course, how do you get that spirit into the organization? And that's something where I try to read a lot on different methods or whatever kind of book comes up in that I'm aware of. And that's, again, perhaps a stupid answer, but it's also a trial and error there.
Yeah.
You think you might find an angle with a person you lead. They say, okay, let's try it from that angle, and will it bring me to the next level in working together? And sometimes you simply have to say, oh, no, sorry, didn't want to touch that. And so I'm, also convinced that you have to do things to improve. And so I really want to keep that openness, because I think that's difficult in that position, because you get so much feedback, you get so much challenges from all sides, and so you have to be focused, of course, on these things, but to stay open and perhaps sometimes also take the time to not take the decision on the exact day, if it's possible, and simply say to your peer, you think a minute, I think a minute, tomorrow we rediscuss. So there are things where I'm trying to get better.
And what's been the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
In a business context, that was in the early days, and that is never stop asking.
Never stop asking questions, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Never stop asking questions.
Yeah. Who is there anybody when you look back over your career, a coach or a mentor or a leader that has been particularly influential to you, would you say?
Several leaders, I would say. I mean, in the beginning, definitely Thomas Pilgram, who was Verkaufsleiter or kind of managing director for Runners Point at that stage. He was that who gave me that humble approach to leadership, and this a team can only be as strong as the weakest part and things like that. So that was really, really helpful. Then in my Foot Locker times, it was a little bit kind of the opposite way, but I learned how to organize things, to make it very clear for everybody, which is very important in a leadership role, that it is crystal clear what you're aiming for. So that was definitely Keith Pride back in the days, who was close working with me, Bart de Wilde, to mention, but also Lou Kimball from a European perspective. And at Globetrotter, definitely Andreas Bartmann, who was kind of one of the founding members of Globetrotter, and had all the experience of the outdoors and how to build a company, and still staying a very, very human, generous being. So that was also very, very impressive. So all the ones that I didn't mention, sorry, you're with me, because I really have to say it was a great journey, and too many to mention.
Yeah. So that was a nice reflection on the past. Maybe now not such an easy one. So what would you say has been the biggest failure professionally you've had to deal with, and what have you learned from that? That would be difficult.
Yeah, I mean, that this is a difficult question, because it's always the question of level you ask, and then you always have reasons, and in the end they don't count because you failed. So definitely, I mean, Runners Point didn't survive the takeover. I was part of it. So, I mean, I can't put myself out of it and say it was everybody else. No, I was part of it from the beginning. And also when it comes to store openings, if you look at, I opened a lot of stores for Globetrotter, but also Runners Point. Did every store succeed? No, unfortunately. Even if you look closer, I hired very good managers here in All4Golf, but also before. And then after half a year, even the hired people came to me and said, "Hey, look, this is not fitting. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry." And there is a part that is your part in there, because you told the guy or the girl about the great future they would have here in the organization and what we will do together. And no, we failed. So it's a question of, on what level you want to look at failure.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to private life, you can talk another hour.
But how do you reflect? I mean, what do you take away from those things? Is it something that you dwell on, or how do you reflect on those without going into the details? But just,
I mean, first of all, it is, I always look into the future. So I reflect, but I somehow then find the future for myself. So I don't spend too much time now in thinking, oh, what could I have done in that or that situation, even though it is a very personal thing, like the hiring question you just asked. So that's just as how I not usually work. But when it comes to reflecting, I think it's important that you simply ask yourself, what was your role and what could you have done differently in that situation or in that environment? And then you take it from there. And sometimes you say, okay, I should have listened to my gut feeling earlier. I should have moved here or there in a different direction. You find the bits and pieces where you say, that was not ideal. And there I believe that in another situation in the future, that will help. Simply in reflecting and being more reflective in the situation like I mentioned before, and saying, okay, let's wait with that decision perhaps for another night, and not shoot too fast. And so that are the things where I'm working on and trying to improve. But I'm not that much a backward-looking guy, and that's another thing for the company as well, where I say we do a lot of mistakes. I want mistakes to happen. I want the trial and error leadership, but I also want us not too much to focus on the things we did wrong. Focus on the things that go well and did go well, and then stop the mistakes. Yes, of course, but go ahead and don't start the blame game.
Yeah, absolutely. So what 3 pieces of advice would you give to future leaders in the sporting goods and outdoor industry?
I mean, first and foremost, love what you do. Be enthusiastic about being part of that industry. And then it's humble, trust, and consistency.
Perfect. And if today was your last day here at All4Golf and you were going to retire, go and play golf, actually play it.
I could need that, yeah.
What would your message be to your team?
Thank you very much for your support and the good times we had. I'm convinced that we have a very good foundation for a very bright future for all of you and the company. And let's have some fun.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode. Please ensure you click the follow or subscribe button in your podcast app so you never miss a new episode. And don't forget, it's completely free. If you're interested in what else we're doing, please follow us on LinkedIn. I'm Dan Trapp, and you've been listening to Sports and Outdoor Mentors.